from Hey Booktubes, and today is my September wrap-up. In September, I read 33 books. I DNF'd 2 of them, which is super low for me. And so I'm going to talk about 31. I had a goal in September to read every day. I did miss 3 days in the 20s, but I read every other day, and that is much better than I've been doing for basically the rest of 2021, so I'm really happy with it. As always, we're going to go in chronological order, and all of the books are listed in the description. They're linked there if they are available on Kindle Unlimited. I have that marked. Yeah, that's it. The very first book that I read was an ARC that I received from Jessica Gadziala. It's called I Like Being Watched, and I gave it 4 stars. It is a voyeurism smutty novella. She has a best friend who just quit a job because she saw hidden cameras, and her kink is voyeurism. She's into it when the person watching her, the guy specifically, isn't aware that she's aware of them, and so she knows that they're getting off, but there's no contact between them, and she just likes that. That's her thing. So when she hears that there are hidden cameras, she eagerly takes the job and kind of accidentally flashes the camera on a regular basis. At this point, she doesn't know the owner, she knows nothing about him, and so it's not her attraction to him that does it for her, and he has the cameras for a security purpose and goes through the footage all the time for security, and is not sure why his new house manager is having so many issues, but can't stop watching and feels really bad about it. I really enjoyed it. It was smutty and fun. Then I read Green-Eyed Monster by Elsie Winters. This is a 50-page novella. I give it 5 stars. It is a paranormal fantasy contemporary mix, so it's kind of a fantasy world, but also modern. So this orc is going to university. He wears button-up shirts. He's a nerd. He's got glasses. He's got caps on his tusks. Something goes wrong at the university, and he rescues a small elf fae. Is very into her, and it's their kind of friends to lovers, but mostly lovers novella, and orcs are naturally very possessive and jealous, and it's him kind of trying to tone that down, and it's so cute. He's such a cinnamon roll and also a giant orc, and it's cute. Like, I loved it. I loved it. Then I read The Bastard's Betrayal, which is Scandalous Scions number 1 by Katee Robert. This is a mafia romance. It is a spin-off of her O'Malley series, but you don't have to read that series in order to read this. This is kind of the adult children of the original series. And I read this specifically because she is stolen from her wedding by the hero, and that is my favorite trope. Give it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. He's from a rival mafia family. She shoots him twice in the first chapter. When she finds out that he is not who she thought he was, he then kidnaps her from her wedding, and violence continues to ensue between the 2 of them, and it's also really cute. And it's Katee Robert, so it's steamy. Next I read Under Her Bed by Mina Shay. I read this specifically because I was doing Becca-opoly-a-thon, Book-a-thon, the book Monopoly one, run by Becca. So Bree from 11 Words had recommended this, and it was the same colors as The Bastard's Betrayal, and I needed that for the dice that I had rolled, and so I read Under Her Bed by Mina Shay. It's mounted by a monster. I gave it 4 stars. It's like 15 pages. The monster under her bed sleeps with her. That's the whole thing. But also there's some cute, he's like very intent on enacting violence on anybody who wrongs her, and I like that. Also, it's free pretty regularly. I got it when it was free, so maybe wait till it's free. Next, I read Magic Burns, which is Kate Daniels number 2 by Ilona Andrews. Obviously, I'm doing the Kate Daniels read-along. We already did the live show for this. It is on Novelty Corner, Steph's channel. I will have it linked in the description if you would like to watch that. That live show covers the first 2 books and the Curran POVs and the novella that goes with those 2. I gave it 5 stars. In this, the banter is great. They are still very much kind of in the enemies to lovers stage. Julie, who is a main character in the series, gets introduced in this book, and I had forgotten most of it and really enjoyed reading it again. As many things as there are in there that I'd forgotten about, and like, these books are just surprising me because I don't remember them because I've read these early ones so long ago. And there's quite a bit of things that are dated, some language that they wouldn't use if they were rewriting the books, but not terrible, and it does get much better in their later books. Then I read Curran's POV, which was Soup. I gave it 4 stars. It's literally his viewpoint of one particular scene in the book, and I enjoyed it. Then I read Headless by Aveda. I gave this 4 stars. This is a short, Sleepy Hollow, erotic short, like under 20 pages maybe. I don't remember. It kind of is interesting. The characters didn't connect with me quite as much as some of her other works that I have read, but I believe they are also getting their own full length, and I will definitely read it, even though she talks about how it's going to be exploring grief, I think, and it's gonna be sad probably. But it would be the perfect short erotic novella for October. Then I read Leviathan Song by Elsie Winters. This is a full-length novel that follows the green-eyed monster. You don't have to read it in order, but some side characters do show up, and the main character in this book shows up in that book. I gave it 5 stars. It's kind of a slow burn paranormal fantasy contemporary romance, and is between a male siren and a elf who is very powerful magically. She can make golems. That is an incredibly rare skill. She's also extremely skilled at it. She can also make like magical amulets and things to protect herself, but she doesn't have combative magic. So when people are coming after her, there's not a whole lot she can do, and the male siren is very protective of her. And he is very afraid to form a permanent bond and his bondmate leave him, and so they take it very slow because any prolonged contact between the two of them progresses the bond, and he doesn't want it to be permanent until he knows that they're going to be together forever and she won't leave him. And it's very sweet. Another cinnamon roll hero, and I love the main character, and it was just fun and sweet. Next I read Charge by Kate C. Wells. This is the first in her Still Bones Motorcycle Club series. Give it 5 stars. This is the author of Run Posey Run. Really enjoy her writing a lot. So even when I am maybe not a huge fan of the particular thing that she's doing or the characters are doing or the storyline, I don't know, I just like her. It's intensely readable. This follows a motorcycle club member who is down in the dumps, kind of feels like he might be worthless because his longtime girlfriend dumped him for somebody richer and more proper. A young 21, I believe, year old single mom moves in next door to his dad's house. He's hitting on her and then realizes she has a son. He doesn't feel worthy of messing with someone with a child, and so he kind of backs off, but he's very into her and is kind of a jerk to her because he's angry that she's not being more careful, because all he can envision is people taking advantage because she's in a not great part of town. And there is a content warning. Her son is the product of rape at a high school party when she was 15, 14. Her parents didn't believe her. Her parents tried to take custody of the child. They did. She now has custody. Her family is awful. Toxic family. So content warning for that. Then I read McCoy, which is Golden Glades Henchman number 3 by Jessica Gadziala. I gave this 4 stars. This is, again, a motorcycle club romance. He sees her when she shoots him, and she shoots him because somebody kidnapped her sister and said that she had to kill a Golden Glades henchman, doesn't matter which one, or her sister would be tortured and killed. So she shoots him a couple times, and he survives, obviously, and it's clear that she is not the killer. And so the Golden Glades henchmen are trying to figure out what's going on, because obviously they aren't really after her. They need the person who tried to put her up to this. They need to know who the enemy is. And so her sister does get released. She wasn't raped, but some things were forced on her. So she has quite a bit of trauma from the time that she was taken. And it's their romance while they try and figure out who's after them. Next, I read Love and War by Shay Sanders. This is a recommendation from Ashley at Bookish Realm. I gave it 4 stars. It was good, but so it is a marriage in crisis novella, which is exactly why I read it, because Ashley told me it was that, and I love that. He should have divorced her. I don't know what to tell you. I am not on her side at all. Shay Sanders does write really messy characters, and I thought that she pulled it off really well. That's why I give it 4 stars. But when I tell you, if I was this man, I would have been leaving her behind. It was wild. I was like I was just When all the reveals were happening, I was flabbergasted. I was just like, you should leave her. What are you doing? Why are you trying to fix this? So that's my opinion. Read it if you want to see the happenings for yourself. It's short, it's entertaining, it's well written, but he should have left her. Then I read That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon, which is Mishaps number 1 by Kimberly Lemming. I gave this 4 stars. This is a fantasy romance with a demon who tries to kill her and then shows up at her house the next day. It's like, hey, sorry about that, didn't mean to kill you. Things happen. You're going to go on a quest with me or I'm gonna kill your whole family, okay? Thanks. And it was fun, it was funny, it was cute, it was adorable. They're traveling through the swamp and he's pretending like there's scary things, so she'll come over and cuddle with him. He is very protective of her and will literally try and burn the world down for her. They do travel to a city where demons are kept as slaves and are considered to be not coherent, not human, you know, all the things that are treated horribly. That kind of gets fixed in the book, but you do definitely see instances of it. And yeah, I thought it was a fun time. It wasn't super long. The humor sometimes worked for me, sometimes didn't, but overall a really enjoyable read. Next I read Sweet Sin, which is Monsters and Muses 0.5 by Sav R. Miller. This is a prequel that I had to subscribe to her newsletter for. It was not worth the hassle. It was good, but like not worth the hassle for me. The thing that I wanted to see was him carving his initials into her thigh, and we didn't even get that on page. So I would just skip it if I were you. Then I read the book that goes with it, which is Promises and Pomegranates. It's Monsters and Muses number 1 by Sav R. Miller. I gave this 2 stars. It was very readable, but it was so bad. Izzy from Happy For Now also read it this month and she really liked it. So if you want to comment Team Izzy or Team Heather, go ahead. If you would like to ignore the made-up feud that doesn't exist, also feel free to do that. But she really liked it. I thought it was kind of garbage, but readable. So this is a dark mafia romance. She is the mafia princess. She's set to marry somebody else. He is the hitman for the mafia, and he's like, no, you're not marrying somebody else. He kills her groom, forces her parents into marrying her to him, and then takes her to his estate where her family pretends like she's been kidnapped. There's a lot of things in here. One, he used to date her mother, so there's that. And then one of the things that really made this not work for me is it skipped all of the things that I really love to read about a couple. They didn't have good conversations on page at all. They didn't have good banter. They didn't have good communication. They were just having sex, and that wasn't fixing their problems. And supposedly they were having conversations off page, but to me, honestly, that's lazy writing. Not to offend anybody, but like good dialogue is a skill for an author, and I personally, for me, this is just my opinion, find it to kind of be the hallmark of a great author. And if you're skipping that, honestly, it's mediocre. All right, I'm sorry. Somebody had to say it. It was me. I also felt like it was constantly contradicting itself, especially with their emotions involved. It was like, I've always loved you. Oh, I can't let you know that I've loved you. And it's like, he completely knows that you're obsessed with him. What are we doing here? And also a lot of toxic family issues. And that was the whole book. And that's none of my favorite parts. That's not my favorite anything. Then I read In His Possession, Bought by a Black Mafia Prince by B. Love. I gave this 3 stars. There's severe content warnings on this. She does actually list the content warnings at the beginning of the book, and she tells you the page and paragraph where they happen, so you can skip the scenes and still get the storyline. But content warnings for rape, for severe domestic abuse with sexual assault, and also for parents, you have drug usage, you have severe OCD where it is ruining your life and your relationship with your loved ones, neglectful parents, forced miscarriage, and forced abortion, although those things do happen off page. So very heavy book. And in fact, at the beginning of the book, she actually tells you exactly kind of when their healthy relationship starts, like what chapter it is, like chapter 9. Beloved has some interesting things, and I think some of this might have been the Mafia, but I've seen tons of it in her other books that I've read, where the men demand respect and like in the tone of voice that their women are talking to them in and stuff. I don't love that. It's interesting too because I feel like all of Beloved's books maybe have very spiritual characters. So mixed in with the murder and the sexy times, you'll also have them talking about God and the relationship with him, and that's always interesting to me. It was a very heavy book, and it wasn't as focused on the couple as I would like, although I did know that, like, you know, she was kind of clear on that. So that's not a fault, that's just a taste thing. But yeah, it's a heavy book. But if you would like a Black Love Mafia book, she's a good writer. Then I read All Systems Red, which is Murderbot No. 1 by Martha Wells. I gave this 4 stars. This is not a romance at all. This is a sci-fi novella, and there's a robot who is programmed to murder, and he kind of overrode his control panel basically, and so he is operating himself, but everyone thinks he's still like under the system, and it's his adventure. He's shy and grumpy. It's fun. I've heard that the next one is even better. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. Very awkward. He's so awkward. Then I read Burley by Jessica Cain. I gave this 3 stars. It is one of her big boy novellas. The dad's best friend, age gap. She's a pop star princess. He becomes her bodyguard. The sexy times really didn't work for me. There is some weirdness there, and also a little bit of daddy kink. Yeah, it was all right, but definitely not my favorite of hers in this kind of series type thing that she's doing. Then I read Games We Play, which is One Night Number 1 by Dana Isley. I gave this 5 stars. I read this for literally one reason. That reason was that Izzy from Happy For Now asked me if I would buddy read it for her because she was lacking some motivation. And so I did, and we both ended up loving it. When I tell you that I went into this book with low expectations, I did not anticipate more than liking it, and I ended up loving it. So it is corpse husband fan fiction. Basically, it's a gamer with a super deep voice who nobody knows his face. He wears a mask when he's streaming, and she's a reporter who signs an NDA. She's interviewing him, and he proposes that they have one night together, and the kinks. There's a different kink every couple pages. There are like some pet play and some slapping and some degradation and quite a few things that maybe won't be for you, but they do move really quickly. So like if you're not into one thing, you're not going to be reading about that for the rest of the book. You're going to read these 2 pages of it and then move on. They end up going to his nightclub where he's very possessive and alpha, and we get to meet all of his friends who get their next books. Honestly, I'm so looking forward to the next book, and it doesn't come out until 2022, and it makes me sad because I would have read several of them if they were out already. But no, it's just this one. But I really liked it. There is a huge content warning for attempted suicide around the 80% mark. It is kind of her retelling of it, but it's very graphic, very vivid, and kind of, you're not prepared for it. I guess she does say this in the content warnings for the book that exists, but it just doesn't mesh well with the rest of the novella. It's kind of like kink, hey, we're having sexy times, hey, you're possessive, hey, we're gonna stay together. Massive traumatic retelling. Let's get back to the sexy times. And so it just, yeah, just be aware of it. Then I read the 5th season, which is the Broken Earth Trilogy number 1 by N.K. Jemisin. I gave this 5 stars. I actually read this all month up to this point, so I've been reading a chapter a day. It is a fantasy book. There's really not any romance in here, like the tiniest amount of romance. Adult fantasy, it's very heavy. If you generally have very similar tastes to me, 1, it might be too heavy. 2, I found that reading it 1 chapter at a time and reading other books in between really helped me to enjoy it and get through it and not feel like it was all too much. So I do really recommend that method if you want to attempt it. You won't know what's going on. I finished the first book. I have no idea what's happening. I don't know where we're going in the next book, but I'm really looking forward to finding out. The writing is excellent. I think that it might take you a minute to get used to the style, but I knew to expect to not understand what's going on, for it to be heavy, for the writing style to maybe be slightly different. And just know, huge content warning for death of a child, and that happens more than one time throughout the book. So if that's something that you absolutely can't read about, it's in the very first chapter, you know, so you kind of know right away. But something bad happens in almost every chapter. But we have origins. They can control the earth. The earth has cataclysmic events happening all the time, and the origins, instead of people being like, hey, thank you, you're awesome, save me, no, they are treated as less than human. They are treated as evil, and people who don't feel cold and pain, and who are just weapons and tools and not actually people anymore. So that always opens the floodgates towards genocide and all of the abuse that you can imagine, and some that you probably can't. So be aware of that. And it's following them during the end of the world. We have 3 different POVs, and yeah, I do recommend. Very heavy, very, I don't want to say complicated, but not like a beginner fantasy, and well worth the read if that sounds good to you. Next, I read Dial A for Aunties, which is Aunties Number One by Jessie Q. Sutanto, maybe might be how you say that. So this follows a Chinese Indonesian family, specifically the 3 aunts, the mom, and the adult daughter, who is our POV. And they all live together, or they used to all live together, but they all run a wedding business together. So one aunt is the cakes, one is a florist, one is a singer, one is something else. And our main character is the photographer, and it follows her second chance romance with her college boyfriend, who she never introduced to her family and she loved. And also her and her family during this wedding weekend, where she accidentally killed her blind date after he tried to sexually assault her. Nothing happens, but he's like taking her to a different location, and it's clear that his intents are not good. So the body accidentally goes to the wedding with them, and they're trying to hide it, and her ex-boyfriend is there, and shenanigans ensue. I loved this. One, I knew that wasn't really a romance, that was more of a family fiction, and that the romance was not heavy. The most they do is kiss on page. It's, you know, the romance is just a small thread. And I also knew that it was wild and over the top. And I found that to be delightful, because I knew exactly what to expect. Not really focused on the romance, more focused on the family and the shenanigans. I really enjoyed it. Did it continue to escalate with the over-the-topness? Yes, it did. But I think that was the author's goal, and I think she pulled it off, and I was thoroughly entertained, really enjoyed it, actually loved it even more than I thought I would. And just, if you have the right expectations, I feel like it's a fantastic book. Next, I read Second Comes War, which is Promised in Blood number 2 by Lil Vincent. I gave this 4 stars. This is a mafia reverse harem between the mayor's daughter and the 4 mafia leaders of the city, and it's dark. It's dark romance. Things continued to be wild and over the top. It ends on a cliffhanger. You have retellings of torture and rape. I just don't really buy the relationship. I am thoroughly entertained. I'm going to finish the trilogy when the last book comes out in December. I'm very much enjoying it. But she's like an 18-year-old average? I don't know. I just don't see what they see in her. I don't see it. But I'm along for the ride anyways. Mr. Red Magic Strikes, which is Kate Daniels' number 3 by Ilona Andrews, 5 stars. We have a gladiator style games happening. Kate and Curran are continuing to progress closer and closer to a relationship. Something tragic happens in this book and I was really not looking forward to rereading it, and it happened earlier than I remembered, so that was helpful because it just kind of snuck up on me. But yeah, it's great. The whole series is great. It's a urban fantasy romance series. I think it's personally the best. I enjoyed literally everything about it. Then I read Curran's POV for the Midnight Games. I gave this 3 stars. I felt like this doesn't really fit into how he should be viewing Kate at this point. And yeah, I didn't love it. Then I read Curran's POV, the hot tub scene, which is almost Smutty Times. I gave it 5 stars. It was really fun to see from his perspective. Then I read Magic Mourns, which is Kate Daniels' 3.5. I gave this 4 stars. This follows Andrea and Raphael, who are side characters. Andrea is Kate's best friend and Raphael is her mate, and they kind of become mates in this novella. It was fun, but not my favorite. Then I read Magic Bleeds, which is Kate Daniels' number 4 by Ilona Andrews, 5 stars. This, I kind of hate the beginning and I kind of hate the end, but this is the book where Kate and Curran really become a couple, and I love it. One of my favorites probably in the series. And up to this point, we've really seen quite a bit of turmoil between Kate and Curran. And the thing that I really like about this series is basically once they're on solid footing, they stay on solid footing. And it's not going to be this constant back and forth for the rest of the series. There's one more like conflict that is going to be an issue. But for the rest of the series, basically, they're a couple that have been together for years, love each other, would do anything for each other. And I love that. Then I read Curran's POV, Kate's origin, when his best friend Jim tells him about what Kate is and who she is from. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it showed their friendship and kind of just Curran's acceptance of Kate. Then I read his POV for The Naked Dinner. I gave this 5 stars. I had not read this before, and I think that this is one that you really should read. It gives important context to why things went down how they did, and it's an explanation that doesn't really happen in the main body of work, and it's something that on my first read through bugged me because I never really got the explanation, but it is given in this POV novella. Then I read his POV, The Conclave. I gave this 5 stars. My only commentary is Kate should have let Curran maim Simon, whoever his face is. She should let him maimed him a little. He would have healed, and he deserved it. Then I read Curran's POV, Awake. I gave this 5 stars. This whole kind of ending still makes me mad, but his reaction and the way he handled it is something that I really enjoy and respect and liked reading about. And then lastly, I read Nichols' story, which is Steelbones Motorcycle Club number 2 by Kate C. Wells. I gave this 4 stars. She is a stripper who's really a dancer, but stripping is kind of one of the only ways she can dance for a job in their town. And she's not extremely smart when it comes to school, and that is kind of a struggle for her. And he's older than she is by like 7 years or something like that. He has rage issues. Growing up, his house, very bad domestic abuse, and it kind of turned his mom into a drug addict and a zombie and somebody who didn't have the will to live because she suffered horrific abuse, and that is kind of the cause of his rage issues. You do see him going to therapy and getting help in this book, but there's definitely some scenes where I wouldn't have been comfortable telling her to stay in the relationship, you know? So content warnings for that. Also, it opens up with her having a scene with some guys where they are attempting sexual assault and he saves her, but all of that's on page, so content warnings for that also. I overall liked it, but I did kind of have some trouble with the heavier parts of the book, and so there you go. Still very readable, really enjoy her writing. That's it. That's all the books I read in September. It's been, I don't know how long since I started filming, but it's all the books I read. Let me know how your reading month was. Would love to hear from you in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.